Hi, everyone. I have Professor Phoenix with me to interview about being a first generation student. He's currently a professor here at UCI, and I myself, I am a first generation student as well. I'm a third year double majoring in criminology, law, and society and psychological science. I will let Professor Phoenix introduce himself as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Davin Phoenix. I'm an associate professor in political science. I've been here at UCI since 2014. My research focuses on race and politics. Specifically, there's my dog, little cameo from a sick dog. Gonna come over here. Studying and doing research and teaching on race and politics with a specific focus on how people's emotional responses to politics differ across race and the implications of that for political behavior. And yeah, I really enjoy getting to work with students here at UCI, and I'm faculty co-director of a great program in the School of Social Sciences, the First Generation First Quarter Challenge, which offers weekly workshops and peer mentoring to first-year social science majors who are seeking to be the first in their immediate families to graduate from a four-year university.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. That's amazing. And again, the purpose of this interview is just to help current college, first generation college students and share with you all kind of our experiences. So the first question I want to ask you, Professor, is how did you choose your major and career path when you were an undergraduate student?
Sure. Well, I think my experience was pretty similar to a lot of our students, that I came into college expecting to major in something completely different than what I ultimately majored in, which was political science. My mom, who raised me, was very encouraging of me to pursue something in the hard sciences, specifically engineering. And so throughout high school, I was taking a lot of math and science courses. But you know, when you hit that freshman orientation, for that first week of classes, I really started to think really critically about the disconnect between kind of a track towards engineering and what world I saw myself living in when I imagined myself as a quote unquote adult. I was like, I see myself kind of more engaged in civics and maybe local government, and engineering doesn't really get me there. And I was thinking, what would get me there? Political science sounds like a really good route. I mean, it has politics in the name. So thinking back to my high school experiences, I really enjoyed history and social studies courses. I thought that's really kind of where my interests really lie. So I kind of negotiated with her for that first semester. I would take a mix of like science and math courses, and then also like, you know, government and history courses. We kind of reassess at the end of that semester. And so it was really no question for me. I was so interested in the government and history courses, so I wanted to continue to pursue that. So I was really just kind of excited about making political science my major going forward. But in terms of career path, I still didn't feel like I had a very clear picture of what would come next after college. Like pretty much all of my friends that were political science majors were all kind of in agreement. They wanted to do law school. And I felt like I didn't want to do law school. I felt pretty certain that wasn't in the cards for me, but I didn't know what else I could do. Fortunately, I was able to kind of have some really good relationships with faculty. And it helped. I went to a small school, Christopher Newport University in Virginia. It's a small public liberal arts school, right? So I really got to know professors because the classes were pretty manageable. And they were like, well, have you considered a PhD? And I was like, nope, I have not. What's that about? And they were like, well, you know, maybe you do what we do, you know, be a college professor. And I was like, well, I mean, that doesn't sound so bad. And then they really had me, and they were like, and when you go to graduate school, right, you're not really kind of paying out of pocket, they're paying you. And I was like, whoa, stop there. That sounds fantastic. So, you know, they encouraged me to look into it, and I was able to do one of those helpful like summer programs before my senior year. They gave me some real exposure to doing some independent research in political science and taking political science level grad courses. So I came out of that summer program, which is called the Ralph Bunche Summer Institute for political science majors that might be interested, really fired up to apply to PhD programs and pursue a doctorate. I still wasn't sure I wanted to be a college professor. I kind of thought somewhat naively, that, with a PhD, there'd be a lot of doors open for me. Didn't realize a PhD is a very specialized, right, degree that,
Mhm.
has a lot of value for people that want to do research and educating, and maybe doesn't have the same practical value for other fields. So I definitely had to do a lot of kind of questioning and had some kind of identity crisis in grad school because I kind of plowed straight out of undergrad. But I definitely was kind of motivated to see what I could do with some more time to really develop, not just as a thinker about politics, but really to kind of innovate and generate new ideas within the field, particularly new ideas that I thought were relevant to um, how my community processed and navigated politics.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Um, I liked hearing about your path. And I think a lot of students feel the same way when they first enter college. They are unsure of what to do, myself included. I chose something in STEM as well without really considering what goes behind it. And so I realized like we really should be choosing things that we're interested in or passionate about because it will take us farther. So thank you for sharing that experience, and I'm glad that you got to speak with mentors and things like that to help you find something, find a career path. I think that's important too, to speak with other people to see what they're doing, and that kind of helps you figure out like what you like and what you don't like. So thank you for sharing that. And while we're on the topic of you like finding people and finding those resources, I wanted to ask what resources you use when you're an undergraduate student. So for like me, I in Trio Scholars, they help first generation low income students, and they've helped me a lot with like workshops and tutoring, things like that. Also, the Black Student Resource Center we have on campus has helped me speak to people that look like me. So I was wondering, like those type of resources, if there was anything that helped you.
Sure. So I definitely had to push myself outside of my comfort zone my freshman year, I would say first couple of years, to seek out opportunities to be a part of something, anything on campus, to really build community with folks and, kind of just get more from the college experience. I was a commuter all 4 years, so it wasn't necessarily easy for me, right, to like get integrated within the campus and be a part of stuff. So I had to really seek out groups to join. And so I gravitated towards two groups. One was Model United Nations. I don't think that was the name of the group. It's been a while now, but that's basically what we were. And I
Mhm.
essentially joined that because one of the first professors I really connected with that I would take a number of classes with, while I was in college, was the faculty lead of that group and said, Davin, you need to just come. And I was like, okay. I mean, she's making it as easy as it can be for me to, seek out some space. And so I was active with that group for a couple of years, and it was helpful to kind of be interacting with a set of students that I might be in class with, but kind of on a new level. We got to do a little bit of traveling, right? Participate in some competitions, and even kind of host an event for high school students. We did some fundraising. Um, a lot of that was geared around that my first year was the first year of like the college football team, right? The D3 team. So we got to do some
Mm.
fundraising at halftime. I got pied in the face at one of the halftime events. So right, so it's just kind of good, right? To like just build some real community beyond the classroom. And the other group I was really active in was the college chapter of the NAACP. And so I think similar to what you're saying, right? This was a great opportunity for me to connect with students that looked like me and shared some of my experiences because at this school, there were very few Black students, which I know you can relate to at UCI, right? So it's really helpful not only to have that opportunity to build that community, but also to feel like we could advocate for the students on campus. We got to kind of meet with university leadership from time to time to talk about changes that the campus was undergoing, how those changes were having, disproportionate effects on the Black
Mhm.
students. And we got to put on some programming and do some volunteering that I felt was really just beneficial for us, right? To know that we could be a part of something bigger than ourselves and maybe use this time when we're in college and the kind of position that brings us to maybe inspire others or offer younger folks an example, right? This could be a part of their
Mhm.
future as well. So I think those are the two things that really come to mind. Even beyond
Okay.
that, I got kind of involved, just my local community, with a local like commission from the city government. And that was really instrumental as well. It was called the Citizens Unity Commission. The part of Virginia that I lived in was a really diverse metropolitan region. And a lot of that was because there's a lot of military families, because all four branches of military. My own mom was in the Air Force for almost 30 years, right? So you had a lot of mixing and matching of people that don't see eye to eye, right? Have very different experiences and, you know, are trying to make their way, you know, in this Southern city. So that was really, I think, helpful for me thinking through some of the questions that I would ultimately seek to pursue as a researcher about, you know, how people relate to one another and get along with one another. So I think even beyond campus, right, pushing myself to kind of be a part of things was really instrumental for me in the short term and in the long term as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I think it's important to get off campus experience as well. So very good. And I'm glad that you took initiative for minority students as well. I think it's important to like advocate for ourselves, because if not us, then who else? Similar with first generation students as well in general. I think it's important to find like leadership positions where we can advocate. And so thank you so much for sharing. I know you talked a little bit about stuff you did outside of the classroom. I kind of wanted to talk about inside of the classroom as a first generation student. Did you ever feel imposter syndrome, and how did you deal with that? So I mean, by imposter syndrome, I mean, like, did you have a hard time comparing yourself with others, or maybe feeling like you weren't as good as others or good enough to be at the campus since you were a first gen? And how did you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, so definitely had moments where I realized that I was kind of in a new world that I didn't know how to navigate. You know, it wasn't that long that I was in college. Well, I guess maybe it is. I don't know. So I started college 20 years ago, right? My freshman year was 2001.
Mm.
And at that time, first gen wasn't really an identity anyone talked about. So I really didn't think much at all about the significance of being the first person in my immediate family to be
Right.
pursuing this 4-year degree. So when I would have those moments, right, I didn't really have the language or the framework to think through why I'm feeling like out of sorts. So I think my first semester is when I really ran into some of those kinds of roadblocks. I think it's two specific examples. One, because I was in these math and science classes, right? I was in this chemistry class, and I didn't at the time recognize the basic fundamental importance of reading the syllabus closely, right? I was just kind of scrolling through to the assigned readings for each week and making sure I'm up on those and thinking everything else. I mean, what is it? It's a chemistry class. I took plenty of chemistry classes in high school. I know how these work. I didn't know how this worked, right? Because the professor had a very specific and detailed way that she expected all of us to submit our assignments, like our lab assignments. And that was all laid out in painstaking detail in the syllabus. And I completely ignored that. So I was so shocked when I got a terrible grade on my first like lab assignment submission. I was like, what is this? And I still didn't understand, like, I need to kind of figure out what it is that they're expecting and what I'm missing from this. I just thought, man, I guess I just somehow screwed that up. So then I did the next lab assignment and also did terribly. And the professor was like, please come see me. It's like, man, this is not good. I'm in trouble already. I'm just trying to answer these questions, right? I was in the lab. I did my little test. I feel like I had everything. And so she broke down for me, like, here, there's a very specific way you're supposed to organize and structure the lab assignments, right? And that blew my mind. Not that she had this thing, right? Because I get that I could completely be oblivious to it, right? That I could like be a couple of weeks, multiple weeks into the course and have no sense of what was right in front of me, the importance of her laying out a very specific set of expectations. So I think that was a real wake-up call for me, right? Like, I can't just wing this. Like, I can't just think this is just like the next iteration of high school. Like, professors have specific standards and I have to meet those standards to succeed, not whatever standards I'm applying. So that was a nice wake-up call. I think the other wake-up call was I came in at a very successful high school tenure. I came in the honors program in that first semester, especially once I wrapped up that kind of cleared up that chemistry stuff and got my grade respectable after following those expectations. I was good, right? I was like excelling, particularly in the honors courses, right? Honors history and this. So to my surprise, my very next semester, I was out of the honors program. Not because I didn't meet any of the grade requirements, but because I didn't realize the basic fact that I needed to manually re-enroll in the honors program after that first semester. And simply because I didn't recognize that, I was no longer in the honors program. So that was another wake-up call to recognize that, like, again, there's like a set of processes. I cannot just be focused on my coursework, right? Navigating college is about managing a lot of timelines, managing a lot of logistic and bureaucratic and administrative responsibilities, and making sure that if I want to do something down the line, I'm laying everything out, right, to get there. So again, recognizing that this wasn't just you show up to your class, you do your homework, you study, and you succeed, right? I'm part of a system now, and that system is going to make demands on me. So I got to be plugged in. I got to read the fine print. I got to ask people questions and not just assume I can figure it out. That was a big thing. I think that's a big thing for first-gen students, right? Like first-gen students are super resilient, right? We're used to figuring things out. We're used to getting things done without help. But
yeah,
and that's good, right? For getting us through, that helps us persevere. That helps us overcome a lot of challenges and adversities. But at the same time, we got to strike that balance. We got to realize that we can't do everything alone, and that it's not weakness to ask for help. Oftentimes, the help is simply so that we can put our skill sets to use in a way that is effectively recognized by whoever is the standard bearer, whether it's that professor or whether it's that admin that says you got to have this and this and this if you want to do this. So that's something that was a big learning curve for me, realizing that I had to be part of this larger system and really kind of keep my eyes open, keep my ears open, read, reread, ask for assistance, ask for reminders if I needed them, right? Because you can't just go it alone.
yes. Thank you. You put that wonderfully. I think a lot of first-gen students, they are afraid to ask for help. And you're right, like we have to learn, like it is okay to ask for help. We are very resilient people. So you put that perfectly. Thank you. Just a couple more questions that I wanted to ask you. Kind of switching gears from like the academic side, I wanted to ask, how did it feel to be a first-generation college student just in your family?
Yeah, I think it was, a bit of a point of pride and a bit of a point of pressure, right? Because you really feel like you carry the expectations of your family on your back to some degree, and you feel like you got to get this right? You got to make good on this opportunity. So I think, college for many of us can be a blur. Right? It's 4 years, maybe 5, maybe 6 years. It goes by really quickly, right? So for me, the pressure really started to mount or to feel like something real a little bit beyond college and like when I was in grad school, right? Jumping straight in. If I didn't have a roadmap for undergrad, I definitely didn't have a roadmap for grad school, especially a PhD, right? So um, it was tough not only to figure out my place and how I'm going to make this work. It was also tough to try to relate to family what I was getting myself into, right? Because people hear grad school, they just think more school. So if you're going to be a student for 7 more years, right? And so I think that was really difficult to say, like, well, it's not really like I'm a student, right? Like I haven't taken classes in a while now, right? I'm like working kind of independently towards this big project, this dissertation. And there's a sense while I am kind of continuing to put these years into school, people in my peer group, back home that I went to college with, or people, from the home church, they're getting married and having kids and buying houses, right? And getting those promotions. And it's like, well, how's that been? Well, he's still in school, So that was definitely a challenge because I wanted to be reassuring to people. I'm okay, right? And I'm on a path to something big. But I really couldn't provide that reassurance because I didn't have that reassurance myself, right? Because I didn't know how this would pan out. And I was feeling myself a lot of doubt about whether I'd made the right choice, whether I kind of belonged, not just in the program, but kind of on this path to the academy. So I think that's what I really felt, that kind of pressure. But I know a lot of first gen folks even feel that in college, right? Especially if you feel a sense of responsibility to be a financial resource, right, for your family. Um, you're balancing work and school, as so many folks are, and if you're feeling that pressure to go into an industry sooner rather than later that you can generate some financial stability with, as opposed to, you know, taking a track that could ultimately lead to something that's both financially stable and satisfying, but it might take you a longer time, right? It might lead you towards kind of a major choice or a grad career, or, you know, post college more schooling that your family's like, really, more of this, right? So I really resonate with that challenge, but it's something that you kind of have to constantly negotiate, but you've also got to be really mindful to balance your responsibility to the people you love and your responsibility to yourself, right? To do something that you think has real impact. There's a way, I think, it's not always easy, it's not always clear, but I think there's a way to reassure your family without completely compromising, right, the core things that you want to do with your life.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I agree. I have similar experiences as my family too. It's like, I feel a lot of pressure, you know, a lot of us are creating something like starting with us. So it is a lot of pressure. I think some of us forget sometimes like we are doing enough, like we're already like headed towards the right direction. So thank you so much for sharing. And the last question I wanted to ask you is there any advice you would give current or future first generation students? Just like to succeed or just in general, like any life advice, school advice that you'd like to give to them?
I guess maybe two brief things. One is you don't really get a chance to fully appreciate how unique this moment in your life is, but there's really nothing like it. You get to interact with people that you may never get another chance to interact with again. Because I think we can take for granted, right? Like we go into our career fields and we often find ourselves surrounded by people that in broad senses are like us, right? We're not that different, or they're so different from us and we're the one person that's different, right? But they're all like one another. And so you don't feel like either you have a wide variety of people to interact with regularly, or you feel like you're constantly the odd person out, right? I think college, especially college UCI, you know, there's a lot of folks that are definitely underrepresented at UCI, but you know, there are just different people, right, with different paths and different future trajectories. And that's one thing I wish I could kind of revisit a little from my college experience, right? Just being in that kind of space and being able to just engage people that are so different, right? Because it's like it's actually a lot of fun, you know, and it gets a little, for lack of a better word, boring, right? To kind of be around the same sets of people all the time. So I really take it in, right? It's a great combination of just people around you and like energy and passion. So like do what you can to maximize. I know that's been really difficult in the last, you know, couple years, this pandemic. And so there's been a lot to be robbed of. But like if you, so it makes like more pressure, more work for you. But if you put in that work, I think the payoff is going to be really meaningful. Especially if you can build some friendships that can really be sustained beyond this. It goes a long way, right? It goes a long, long way. And I think the other thing, maybe more long term, is to really embrace the difficult conversations, even difficult conversations that you're having with yourself about where you're at and where you want to be and how you get there. I do wish that I had had more conversations, both with faculty and family and with peers, but also with myself about what I really wanted and how I would get there. I think I ended up in the right place, right? But I ended up there after a lot more heartache than I needed to take to get there. right? So I think I could have been a lot more reflective and even self-reflective on the pros and cons. Because it's not like you set yourself on your path, and once you're confident, this is your path, everything is gravy, right? There's going to be huge challenges and adversities and setbacks. Those are inevitable. But I think what helps people persevere those, it's not just about like what you know and who you know and your skill set and your intellect. I think what's the difference between persevering through that and not is like, well, I'm confident that it's worth going through these setbacks because I really do believe that this might not be the perfect route, but it is the route that gets me where I want to be. There's really no perfect path, which I think can be a relief for people. You really do have to, end of the day, just make a leap with what information you can gather. But you know, if you can come to a decision that is informed by a lot of deliberation with your faculty that you are tight with, and that's why it's important to build relationships with faculty, right? With maybe students that are a year or two ahead of you, even grad students, right, that are your TAs, right? There's so many sources of insight and perspective. If you can glean from them, right, what warts and all might be the path that's ideal for you to take, then when those adversities and setbacks come, you're going to be ready because you're like, I know if I can get through this, I'm going to be that much more better positioned to be where I want to be. So I think, you know, just try to take it all in and just really connect with people and talk to people. There's no shame in asking people's questions, right? And there's no shame in letting people know, hey, I'm just trying to be part of the space, right? I'm trying to connect with other folks. I had those conversations, right? Where I really be like, yeah, I'm just trying to get to know people, right? Or I'm in someone's office hours. Yeah, I really don't know. I got a year and a half left. I don't know what I'm going to do, right? It can be awkward in the moment, but it's so worth it. Out of that sense of discomfort, I think there's a lot of wisdom and there's a lot of freedom to get. So yeah, just make yourself present for people, make yourself vulnerable for people, and it's worth it. You know, it doesn't always feel great in the moment, but the payoffs are worth it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I agree. It's important to like ask other people, like I was touching on before, asking them about their paths. And I really like what you said about like being reflective too. I think sometimes we're, as first generation students, we're very much on go mode and we're just like thinking of, oh, our family, thinking we need to do this in order to get here, et cetera, et cetera. So it's important to kind of just sit down with ourselves, like, wait, what do we actually want? Since at the end of the day, we're living our own lives and we're the ones that are going to have to just, yeah, like I said, live with ourselves. So it's important to kind of sit down and reflect on, oh, is this something I'm enjoying? Is this something I want to do? And not get so lost in like the pressures of everything. Because I think that causes some burnout for some of our students as well. But thank you so much, Professor Phoenix, for coming here and talking with us. You had a lot of valuable experiences, and I'm sure that a lot of the current and future first generation students will appreciate it. I learned a lot from you. And is there any last things you'd like to say? I think you pretty much said like everything perfectly, but I just wanted to ask if you had any other comments or anything you'd like to share with our first gen students before we kind of close this interview out.
No, I would just say, I think, you know, don't be a stranger. If there's anything that you heard here that you think, oh, I might want to talk to Professor Phoenix, yeah, reach out. You know, I'm around, I'm available, and I love speaking with first gen students.
Thank you so much. And with that, that'll conclude our interview. So thank you so much, Professor Phoenix, and we will see you all another time.